All right, welcome back, India Women Network. Well, we are all a part of it, and very proudly look up to it, and look at learning a lot from fellow women members and participants. So now the time for the big debate, and I think this is very interesting because we are talking about career timelines versus the biological clock. Now, both fortunately, unfortunately, coincide always. And how do you kind of balance it out? I think that's a perpetual question, will continue to be there always. New life, new challenges, but let's break this up, and we have wonderful speakers. I'll quickly name them, and then of course our very own Anita Maddock will take us through this session. She will be the moderator. So let me just quickly tell you who the speakers are. Dr. Dhwani Mago, who's a gynecologist. Ms. Rajni Athreya, Senior Director, Insights in Country HR Services, South Asia, Kantar. Ms. Rajpreet Kaur, Founder, Say Cheese. Ms. Soumya Iyer, Founder and CEO, DVO Digital. All right, over to you, Anita.
Thank you, Swati. It was very graceful of you, the way you are linking all the sessions together. And the previous session was very enlightening indeed, in terms of all the kind of innovations we are seeing. I found myself asking, the technology is now catching up with, and doctors are almost like God, in terms of the way they can take your cells and create another human being from your skin cells, We have Dr. Rishikesh Pai say that. But there is a rhythm in the universe, that's for sure. And the Earth rotates on its axis, it revolves around the sun, and many other such rhythms are there in the entire universe. And each one of us is a part of these circadian rhythms that are influenced by all the energy around us. Human beings and women in particular rhyme with the rhythm and are governed by many cycles in their lifetime. And don't we know that as well? That things are always evolving and cycles continue to happen and history tends to repeat itself. Biological clocks during our lifetimes ebb and flow, impacting our bodies, our hormone cycles, our emotional and psychological wellness too. Each one of the trillions of cells in our bodies has an innate clock which can sense the rhythms and responds to the external environment. Humans evolved hundreds of millennia ago, and the clocks were set at that time. We don't have anything to say with the biological clock. We cannot change that. It was set at that time. It was much later that women decided to take up careers, and the requirements of work and jobs were superimposed on top of this biological clock. In 1978, the Washington Post carried an article by Richard Cohen titled, "The Clock is Ticking for the Career Women." And the debate and discussion around the emerging issues has been ongoing ever since. While the majority of the debate is around fertility and age when career women need to have children, our session is going to take a wider look at the impact of the biological clock on women's careers. So let's look at the career timeline. Typically, it's usually the age group of 25 plus that women start taking up careers after education and move to a working lifestyle. Monthly cycles and PMS make it difficult to work and perform at the same level every day of the month. The mood swings also accompany these cycles, and there is an impact on work. Often career women delay finding partners for marriage, and marriage also, because career and success are higher priority and something they work really hard for. So each woman has their own journey, but a large chunk today decide on marriage just around the time when they're eligible for the first promotion 5 or 7 years into their careers. The issue of having a child often gets put on hold for a few more years, and the biological clock keeps ticking. And increasingly, women take time off from work during many occasions as a result of this clock. Returning to work after a baby break is not an easy task for the woman, and she juggles her commitments in the best years of her life, 30s and 40s, the best years of her life. A man would be giving everything to his career during these years and be succeeding at everything he does, but a woman is just somehow managing to juggle everything. She divides her time and priorities in multitasking, And when the kids are older, they go to college, she finds that I'm a little less guilt-free, but the biological clock steps in and premenopausal hormone changes result in different sets of mood swings. And we all know, those who have been through menopause know what it means. By the time she's recovered from menopause, she's hit the age of 50 plus 60, and it's time to retire. So definitely the biological clock does not support career timelines. There are many points of big debates here, and there are many pros and cons and ifs and buts and dilemmas and decisions that women have to take along the way. But I'm going to leave most of the debating and discussing to our panelists over here today. And our eminent panelist is Dr. Dhwani Margo. Dr. Dhwani, she's a practicing obstetrician and gynecologist with an experience of over 13 years. She specializes in high-risk maternity care and listen to this, infertility management and all gynecological problems. She's committed to giving the best gynae care to all women possible. She believes in empowering her patients by educating them on their healthcare needs. She has recently received an award called the Women's Health Icon Award from the Indian Society for Artificial Reproduction. That's a new term I learned when I read her resume, artificial reproduction. And she's active on a lot of social media platforms to educate and empower women. She's a young woman herself, going through her own journeys, and yet she's also catering to the needs of women with their biological clocks. Our second speaker is Rajni Athreya, Senior Director, Insights and Country HR Services, Kantar, South Asia. She's a seasoned HR leader with about 30 years of experience across banking, securities, information services, technology, and market research. She works closely with South Asia executive leadership and global HR leadership to drive business performance, organizational transformation, and future readiness. And she's going to be telling you a lot about the initiatives Kantar. Kantar is largely women-based organization. They have a big women segment of the population, and they do a great deal to help women with their biological clocks. So she's going to share with you some of those experiences. She holds a physics degree from the University of Madras and is an MBA from XLRI. Our next speaker is Soumya Iyer. I enjoyed my conversation with her immensely. She's the founder and CEO of DVIO Digital, a global integrated creative tech and digital first marketing organization that focuses on 360-degree digital transformation of brands and businesses spanning across a multitude of sectors. So she's the new millennial on our panel. In addition to being the driving force behind DVIO, Soumya is also a startup investor, a prolific TEDx speaker, and a chief mentor at the Mad Tech Incubator, a marketing incubator for startups in advertising, content, and marketing technology. In her extremely hard-won free time, when she isn't attending boardroom meetings, she would be seen attending PTA meetings in school for the young daughter, or even hitchhiking across Bhutan with her friends and family. An avid reader, she spends her non-existent time mentoring young talent and listening to podcasts. So that is about Soumya. We have our next speaker is Rajdeep Kaur. After a successful corporate career of 16 years, straddling both corporate treasuries of Tata Consultancy Services and Bharti Group and the banking industry, Rajpreet discovered her calling as an entrepreneur. And she founded Say Cheese in 2020. So she's an entrepreneur now. Rajpreet has always been very passionate about contributing towards an inclusive world. Coming together of her rich corporate experience and passion resulted in the launch of Say Cheese. It's India's emerging femtech platform that provides personalized solutions towards health challenges faced by women in career, relationships, and health within a trusted environment. Rajpreet is an MBA from MBI Gurgaon and FRM and computer science engineer. She completed the entrepreneurship program from Wharton. She's a gold medalist from IIFT, Ministry of Commerce, a certified counselor and a practicing leader as coach. And she's also researching in the field of neuroscience and applications of other behavioral techniques like transactional analysis, Gestalt, and NLP. Rajpreet believes that if you want to fly, fly fast, fly alone, but if you want to fly far, fly together. So welcome to my panelists, and I hope we are all raring and ready to go with our thoughts. And my first question is aimed at Soumya. And Soumya, what has been your experience with your own biological clock and the ways in which it has supported or not supported your career? And how did you go about dealing with the dilemmas your biological clock may have thrown up?
Hey, hello. So happy to be on this panel. Thank you, Anita. I enjoyed my conversation with you as well. So, Anita, like we spoke, I think I have my perspective on the biological clock or the view I'm going to bring in is slightly different. For me, I've been dabbling with entrepreneurship since the age of 16, so I've started a few businesses, run a few businesses. By the time I was about 21 or 22, I had, when you're an entrepreneur, you have a fairly intense life, where you become self-aware, you're asking a lot of questions to yourself. And because of various reasons, because I started early, I think I was a little bit more self-aware than most people my age. And I asked myself some really tough questions. So my questions were, I knew it was only going to get busier, for me. By the time I was 20 or 21, and since I was already dabbling with running a few companies for the last 4 or 5 years, I knew it was only going to get difficult or more, it was going to get more busier. So I asked myself a few questions, which were, do I see myself as a married woman, or do I want a partner, or do I want to get married, right? So the answer was yes. And it was, it was my answer. It wasn't influenced by, anybody around me or societal conditioning, nothing. The second question I asked myself is, do I see myself as a mother, or do I want a child? And again, the answer was yes. In a time when actually, I was already so busy. What the choice I made really was, I chose to get married when I was 22, and I chose to have a child by the time I was 24. So because I knew that once this milestone has been achieved, I'll probably be free to do so many other things in my life, which anyway I'm raring to do.
Yeah,
so
that's very early, according to you.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? When you call me a millennial,
almost like child marriage, in today's context.
It was a choice. So I did everything legally correct, though, Anita.
I'm with you. I was also the same age, 22 and 24. I got married in my children. So I'm with you completely.
Correct. So, yeah, I mean, when you said I don't think many millennials, would think the way I'm thinking right now. But when that happened, so obviously, I was at the peak of my, reproductive timeline, and, it was hassle-free, it was easy. Your health supports you when you're much younger, right? So you're able to go through all of that. It's so much easier to go through that. But then what really happened for me was something a little different, which is because literally my child and my business was born in the same year. I went through a completely different challenge, which is the kind of pressure I had from my family, from people around me, about how I should raise my child, and about how much time I should give my child, and about the things that a mother is supposed to do. And, that started to sort of really build on me as guilt, or, started to build on me as something that I'm short of and I'm not doing enough of. And I think that's when it was a very, very deep realization that I had, was that no two mothers are the same.
That's true.
And there is no template for how you should be a mother.
True.
And if you, your child is so perceptive, when they're growing up, is that if you feel guilty, they will play on your guilt.
Yes.
And if you behave as if this is the only kind of mother that exists, they will accept it. So that's actually what happened with me when the most part of my motherhood, my daughter who's 13 now, literally I think my husband sometimes says you guys have grown up together. So she's, we're very inclusive. We are, she's asking me about work. I don't look at personal life and professional life as two different things. I think it's an integrated whole, really. I involve her in a lot of interesting conversations from the very beginning. So she doesn't know of any other kind of mother other than my kind.
The guilt is in here, it's not out there. So
It's
if you don't
definitely
feel
not out
guilty, then it doesn't get transmitted.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's been really my biggest learning as a mother. Which is there is no one kind of mother, and that what you reflect onto your child is what they accept. And I know so many of my friends who go through this guilt because they're not able to give enough time to their child. The way you parent your child is the only way to parent your child. That's it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What a great lesson. I think if every woman sitting here in the audience who's a mother or a mother to be can go with just this one insight, it can change a lot in the world. Yes, so who's next? Rajni, Rajpreet, I'm saving Dr. Dhwani for the last. Rajni or Rajpreet? Rajni, would you like to talk about biological clock?
Sure.
When we were brainstorming on the topics, this topic was your idea. So tell us more about what biological clock in your career timeline and how it is.
Sure. Thanks, Anita. Thanks. And I'm really enjoying the day and the session. And it was fascinating listening to you, Soumya. And I was reflecting on my own journey, actually, For me, I think I pretty much ambled along. I wanted to, and it was like many years ago, more than 2 decades ago. So I only knew that I was, I was very keen to start working and, be a career woman. And I also knew that being a woman, obviously I had a biology which is different from a man. And therefore I will have to go through childbirth and whatever it is, but I just took it in my stride, I guess. But what really changed it for me is a part of my career, which happened about 7 or 8 years into my career. I had started my professional life as a banker, as a retail banker. And 7-8 years into retail banking, I realized I wanted to move into HR. And with great difficulty, I moved because people were not very sure as to why I wanted to move into HR from a frontline sales role. But anyway, I did that. And after I did that, I realized I wanted to gain an academic input from one of the best institutions in HR. So I applied for Excel and I wanted to get into Excel. And yes, I did get into Excel for a 3-year semi-residential course, which warranted that I had to be away from home and my hometown for 60 to 70 days a year. But the beauty of that whole structure was that I was a working woman. I was a mother. I was running a family. I had a 4-year-old kid at that point in time. So that was a moot point, saying, do I want to do this? Because anyway, I'm employed. Anyway, I have moved into HR, but do I want to do this? Or do I want to kind of continue being the mother and the wife and a career woman, which I was in any case? And then that was a big decision point for me. And the whole point about biological clock and the thinking about biological clock started then. And then I said, look, again, this whole realization, I am different from a man. I will continue to be like this. I am clear that I want to continue being a career woman. I want to be successful in what I do. I want to be the best in what I do. So I need this academic input. So I took that call to go to Excel. Absolutely. But then that's not the end of it. 2 years into my 3-year course, I became pregnant with my second child, which again, I wouldn't really call it a well-planned move or whatever, but having said that, that was again a conscious call for me. What do I want to do? But then I think the biggest piece for me was my own conviction in my choice, that I chose to do this and I will see through the end of it, come what may. So in that sense, for me, I think the biggest thing is that choice or that recognition that, biologically you are different. Biologically, you will be forever different from a man. And therefore, how do you make it work for you once you've made the choice? And that's the way I think I look at it. And it's interesting, because even somebody like an Indra Nui, who is so well known, who's so well respected, who's so successful in her career, in her book she says the biological clock and the career clock are perpetually in conflict with each other. And she talks about it in context of how do you make it work and how do you bring in support systems to make it work. And she talks about how she managed to do this. And I think, reflecting on my own experience, I did that. I mean, I had a supportive family circumstances. My husband was very supportive, thankfully. Although my mother thought I had gone out of my mind doing all of these things, but it's a choice. It's a choice. It's a reality. It's a reality that is there, and it's a choice that you've made. So that's the way I look at it. So just deal with it. Yeah.
Great. Different ways of coping with the biological issues.
Yeah.
Yes, Rajpreet, we'd love to hear from you about your biological clock, your career timelines. How did it pan out for you so far, and how does it look like going into the future?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Anita and Ricky and the CI team for having me here today. Really a pleasure talking to all of you and listening to all your views. So I could relate a lot, especially, to the fact that every mother has her own way of parenting, and I could resonate a lot with that. So even a lot of career decisions that I made in my life were linked to the biological clock, I may say, to make it work, as Rajni was also mentioning. So I got married at 26, and I was already in my first job at TCS in those days. And of course, then I went on, I was a trader. So I was dealing in foreign exchange currencies and swaps and options. And when I was heading the FX and swaps desk at Bharti, and it was 7 years, I was like in and out trading, but I wanted to have a child. And so I took a conscious decision after marriage to actually step back from trading and, go the family. Always working. I joined HSBC after that and worked in the banking industry. However, there were other experiences, like, when I was pregnant, there was a that I had worked very hard for, and the offer was actually revoked because when I disclosed to the hiring manager about my pregnancy, because the need of the hour was that you needed somebody throughout and things like that. And then, of course, coming back from maternity is also a very difficult phase that a woman has to go through, because she needs to be there for the child, and the role changes when you join back. So it's not as meaty as what it was. And, that time when you need the support, the maximum, it's not really at its best, I would say. So challenges, and I would say that a lot of unconscious biases and stereotypes that exist in organizations, they do impact the behavior of the organization. Of course, there are then you have to find your systems within the organization and support system within the family to make it all work for you. And it does, it does eventually work out. And but these experiences actually left a profound impact on me, to the extent that I actually, after working for 16 years, I founded my own company, Say Cheese. And we do work with organizations to help them overcome these biases, and are also creating a safe space, an ecosystem for women to fall back on in times of needs. So
it's amazing how you've taken your personal experience and the dilemmas you experienced and brought that to a digital platform, and now offering that space to people, and women in particular, where they can engage with their issues of life and their issues.
Yes.
So yes, that's absolutely awesome journey, I can say. So Dr. Dhwani, you are the one who has some answers that help women cope with those biological clock issues and the kind of dilemmas. And between Rajni, Rajpreet, and Soumya, they are the alter ego of all the women in the universe. We have 3 very different ways in which they've dealt with biological clock issues. And I would think that this represents the whole universe of women's experience.
Right, absolutely.
What are the answers that modern medicine you can offer?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank CII for having me here, and Anita ji also. And this topic is very close to my heart because I have, being a mother of two children and being a practicing gynecologist for the last 13 years, it's been a roller coaster ride. It's not easy. And, I would like to say that women, nowadays we have options, for women in case they want to delay their pregnancies or they want to delay their marriages. So there is an option, of freezing your eggs. So I don't know if a lot of women are aware about it. In the Western countries, definitely there is a lot more awareness, regarding this. But, when I got married, definitely, I was being a gynecologist, I was not aware about it at that time. I'm talking about 14 years back. So, women have a very short fertility period compared to men. So, and the prime time, of your egg, the best quality eggs are around 28 to 32 years. So, for whatever reason, you want to postpone your marriages or your pregnancies, now you have an option of freezing your eggs. And it's a very short, 20 to 30-minute procedure. And you can freeze your eggs for n number of years. And later on, especially for corporate women who, want to have their babies later on, say probably after 35 years or something, the eggs are in perfect, the quality does not decline, even if you freeze it for say 10 years or so. So that is, one option I want women to be aware about. Because nowadays, being in infertility field, we get so many women, who come after 35 years, they want to have babies. And now their eggs have, the quality declines so much that sometimes they have to go ahead with donor eggs. So this is something, that women need to be aware of. And also, like I was going through Dr. Pai's, debate as well. So even he mentioned that every year, women, after being sexually active, it's very important that you come to your gynecologist every year for a routine checkup. And we advise you some blood tests and some ultrasounds. And there is one hormonal test, that's called AMH, that's anti-Mullerian hormone. So that I would recommend all the young women to get it done yearly, so that, if at some moment that hormone starts falling or declining, that is a trigger that, okay, so either you plan your pregnancy now or you go ahead and freeze your eggs. So that is, again, something that young women and, women who want to postpone their babies need to be aware of. So these are, two latest options. And well, for my, throughout my career, I would just like to, tell women that it's, how you create your support system. And for working women, shouldering so many responsibilities at one go, it's definitely, they say it's very difficult to create a balance. Like Soumya also said, it's just with children and with, every day you have to take a decision. Either you're a wife or a mother or a doctor, and you focus on your priority. You take a priority. And if, you have to do that particular thing at that time, you focus on it. So that reduces the stress levels. So I would say that like in my career, initially when I was pregnant with my first child, being a doctor, being a gynae, I was asked to, quit because, at that time, maybe they did not want a pregnant gynae, that was, they thought maybe I wouldn't be able to work too much. So I was actually asked to quit and I had to take a break for a year. So this is where your, sisterhood comes in. You women have to support each other. You have to empower each other. Yeah, you cannot just, ask women to quit their jobs. And when I wanted to bounce back, there was a separate set of women who helped me to, come back and gave me that confidence. So I think, in this journey, sisterhood really counts, and we must encourage each other to, come back and bounce back in life. So
while researching for today's session, I came across an article that said that in the US, year on year, the cost, there's almost a 60% increase in the number of women who freeze their eggs.
Yeah, actually.
Women are not finding partners, not getting married, delaying.
Yes.
very important.
Yes.
So they say maybe at 40 I'll have a baby, but then freeze the eggs and it's very much possible to have.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a question in the meantime from Nima. What's the cost for freezing eggs? Dr. Dhwani, you'd like to share? And how does it pan out in our country? And how does it work in our country?
Yeah, so it's very much there. Definitely in all the big cities where IVF centers are there, you can go ahead and freeze your eggs. And the procedure cost would be around somewhere around 25 to 30,000. And the cost for freezing the egg for 1 year is again around between 20 to 30,000. So that has to be like a yearly renewal.
While it's not cheap, but for a person, a woman who's working and earning.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's quite not very out of the pocket. Okay. So now I'd like to say, Soumya, when you hear of all these new technologies, and we heard Dr. Rishikesh Pai also in the previous session saying that you can take an egg, technology is being developed in Japan, you can take an egg, you can take a cell from your skin and do the reverse engineering, make it into a stem cell, and do some more reverse engineering, make it into an egg, and then create an embryo out of that. So that's a technology which he spoke about, which is, on the horizon. So when you hear of all these things, and I'm, so I'm also asking, how would women really make those choices? I don't know. I've not been in that place, but suppose you were to put yourself in that place, how would you make such a choice? Soumya?
Yeah. So I think it all boils down to an authentic choice, Anita. I have friends who are 35, 36, really, really dear friends who've chosen not to get married, not to have a child. They're choosing some of these things out of very clear idea about what they want out of life. So one is there is no clear template to, again, how a woman should lead her life, right? But on the other side, on the other hand, I also have friends who have made those career choices, chosen to delay either getting married, finding a partner, or having a child. But at 40, suddenly they're missing all of it.
Exactly.
And they are so, sometimes they feel so broken, when they see their peers, their friends with spouses and children. So I think the biggest the biggest ask is going to be to make an authentic choice. When you're 30, 31, 32, if your choice, if you have to take that, you have to take the thinking very seriously, because biological clock is legit, right? I mean, it's universal truth. So you can't really fight that. Yes, you can take good care of yourself, which I totally should. I see most women who birth children and, get married just tend to lose focus on their body. That's another topic altogether. But I think it's so important to take care of yourself. That's something that I'm a huge sort of evangelist for. Women taking
life happens, at 30, 32, you take a choice and say, I'm not going to get married, I'm not going to have children, I'm going to give
exactly. It's important to.
What do you regret? So might as well freeze my eggs.
Might as well freeze. So if you're choosing, if you're not clear, freeze. If you know, freeze. If you know for sure that you're not going to have a child, then it's fine. It's okay that I find a partner. So yeah, I think authentic choice.
Sorry, Rajpreet, what is your take on this one? The new technologies that are coming to help women manage their reproductive cycles better and the biological clock better. I do believe there is also a role of food and nutrition in all of this. Being an integrative nutrition health coach, I have learned and I've understood, and I know for a fact that many women honor their cycles. So when you're PMSing, you don't take a decision which is a hard decision. You do more creative and reflective work. You take a decision after your periods are over, because the mood swings and the mental frames are very different at these points in time. And then you eat the right kind of foods that nourish your body, anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory foods. The way our grandparents did, and we didn't believe them when they told us and advised us, but now the world is going back there. So anyway, I do believe food and nutrition also has a major role to play in managing the biological clock. But Rajpreet, what's your take on this, on the whole available technologies and coping strategies for managing the biological clock?
Sure. So I would like to talk about two things. Firstly, I believe that one is choices that Soumya was talking about, and also about taking responsibility for those choices. A lot of times, when you're working, you tend to just take your health for granted. And I have done that for many, many years. And so when you're young, your body just supports. But there is, some jolt that you get at times, in your career, that the body calls for attention. So before the body calls for it, that debate on prevention is better than cure. So, I would support that. And it's very, very important to listen to your body and, take care of it. Yes. And with respect to technologies, I think the world is really, opening up. I've seen like a decade back when people were like really hushy, about talking about an IVF, or, things were like, people were really hushy about it. And of course, it's great that, even talking about the menstrual cycle, things have evolved. And I think we've really, in the last decade, come where we can openly talk about these issues, and people are accepting it and using some of these technologies to benefit them and support them, make it easier for them. So one should really, I think, more educative sessions around, more education around these latest technologies. And as Dr. Dhwani mentioned about, like, I was not aware about freezing eggs at all. So, I think awareness around these should also be done as the technologies are emerging. So, yeah.
That's one of the reasons for this session also, that this kind of stuff is available. But the prevalence of IVF centers everywhere, there must be a market for it. That's why they're here. My building alone, my office complex alone has 2 IVF centers, just within close proximity of each other. So there must be a market for it, and they're chock full of people all the time. So there must be some uptake, and there must be people having conversations, although maybe behind closed doors. But Rajni, your organization Kantar has brought a lot of this conversation on the table, and is not closeting it anymore. I'd love for you to share some of those lovely best practices about the biological clock that you talked to me about.
Thank you. Sure. Please. Thank you, Anita. Yeah, would love to talk about it. See, today, picking up some of the threads from, what Rajpreet, Soumya, and Dr. Dhwani were saying, today there is, in fact, a lot more, awareness about the whole concept of biological clock and how to make it work, etc. That it's there. But that's from an individual point of view. I think to truly make a difference and to make it work for people at large, for women at large, and for working women at large, I think there is a role that organizations have to play as well. And as responsible employers, we have to play as well. At Kantar, I mean, and you did mention we have a sizable women population. Yeah, we have a good, male-female gender ratio. But more than that, we are very, very keen in terms of bringing this whole point of awareness around women's health, both physical health and emotional health. So we have an Inclusion and Diversity Steering Council. It's led by business leaders. In fact, our South Asia Council is led by Preeti Reddy, who's also part of the discussion today. She opened it. So we focus a lot in terms of defining specific actions or defining specific initiatives that take care of women's health physically and mentally. And many organizations do it. So aspects around flexibility and work, aspects around bringing people back from post-maternity support and, employee resource groups, every organization is now kind of doing it. At Kantar, what I particularly wanted to speak about was around menopause. When we speak about women's health, we focus a lot about the early biological clock or the, till the childbearing age. We haven't really, from an organizational point of view, at least, we haven't evolved to a state of talking about menopause, where we have, women whose careers are now expanding, who are longer in the workplaces, and therefore who also go through the segment of menopause, and therefore how do they deal with it, and how does an organization enable them to deal with it, both from an emotional point of view and a physical point of view. So it's something we've started at a global level. In India, it's still a bit sensitive. We know it's still a bit sensitive. So the conversations have not started in as much depth as it has started in, for example, in the UK. We are bringing in, male leaders and male allies to talk about menopause and its impact on women, both from a physical point of view and from an emotional support point of view. And what we're doing is this whole piece is, to break the taboo. I mean, during the course of the day, we were talking about, banishing taboos around women's health and biological clocks, etc. So we have men leaders talking about menopause. We are working with an external advocacy organization in the UK called Over the Bloody Moon. And they are sort of helping us drive some of these conversations internally within the organization. There are panel discussions, there are webinars, there are special helplines, so the discomfort about having a conversation around menopause is what we're trying to kind of get out of, because we are having decent amount of conversations around childbirth and and support during childbirth and post childbirth, etc. So that's one piece of it, the menopause focus. The second piece, which many organizations do, but what we are really focusing on is to kind of help bring back people, women who have taken a break for whatever at different milestone points in their life. And so we are kind of focusing our efforts to target this group and kind of make them comfortable enough to get back. And many a time it needs a lot more than just invitation. It needs that sense of comfort and an environment that is enabling for them. So we're trying to kind of focus on those specific initiatives as well, in terms of building a kind of a pathway to help them transition from, if they've taken a break and they've been away from corporate professional lives for about 5-6 years and they're coming back, they themselves may have a bit of misgiving or a lack of confidence or whatever it is. And so how do we break those? And it's not just inviting or keeping positions open for them, it's also enabling them to make that transition in a seamless fashion. That's something that we're focusing on as well. We are focusing on a lot of other things, but a lot of organizations do that. So I just wanted to call these two out in particular.
Amazed. I'm zapped. I'm totally zapped because families don't have menopause conversations. Husbands don't talk menopause with their wives. And wives don't talk menopause with husbands. And you actually broke that and brought it on the table in an organization. And not only that, you brought men involved as well.
Yeah.
So when those men go back home, they know that they can have these conversations even with, I think hats off to you and hats off to Kantar. I do hope this is the beginning of a trend and it doesn't remain as an isolated effort. And I do hope that whatever you guys are doing in the UK spreads across the globe and planet as well, because it's very much needed. This conversation is very much needed. So Dr. Dhwani, what is your take on all the things that the ladies have said? And, what do you think needs to be done about our Indian policy and our culture and, and around all the women health issues? What are the 2 or 3 things that are most important in your mind?
So I would, really want to, stress on education, like even other members have mentioned, educating women about their health, it is very important. And it should start from, school level. So educating girls about menstrual hygiene, about, nutritious diet, about, to prevent anemias, to prevent vitamin deficiencies, that is very prevalent nowadays. And, also about mental health, talking about mental health is very important, especially post-COVID era. I think every second or third person is suffering from, anxiety, depression, and all negative thoughts. So we have to have, we should start conversations on mental health. I would also, our public health sector needs to be, it needs to be improved. It has to come at par with the private health sector. What we've noticed in this post-COVID times, the health sector really needs improvement, and the government needs to, invest in public health care. And also, I would like to stress that we should increase the screening programs for, cancer detections, because there's a considerable increase in the rate of malignancies and cancers. So we need to, make women aware about these prevention programs for malignancies, especially cervical cancers, breast cancers. So there are particular timings to get your screenings done, and women need to be aware about it. And also we need to start programs for prevention of lifestyle diseases like diabetes and hypertension. So because these are something which can be prevented rather than we are treating them, but we have to start with prevention programs as well. So these are certain things that need to be improved upon.
A woman goes to a gynecologist when she's pregnant, she's Mr. Yes. Or when she's having problems with menopause. Normally she wouldn't even go there at that time. But if there's a problem situation, excessive bleeding, whatever, then she would go to a gynecologist. Otherwise, women don't go. So what is your take on that? Do you think women need to go annually to a gynecologist or what? I mean, how does
absolutely. There has to be women, once, like I mentioned, they are sexually active, you need to visit the gynecologist once a year at least, where we do your basic health check, your vitamin levels, your blood profile is done, and a prophylactic ultrasound is done, of the abdomen. And a pap smear has to be done once in 3 years. That is the screening for cervical cancer. So that is done once in 3 years, once you're sexually active. So these are certain things, you need to keep in mind. And for breast cancer prevention, after 40 years, it has to be like a yearly checkup, So do keep that in mind. And
girl, visit your gynecologist.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much. We are really exceeding time. I wish there was time for question and answers. But if anybody in the audience has a question, please put it in the chat window. We'll make sure it gets to the speakers, and we'll make sure that you'll get an answer. But just leaving with one very fast, one-line motto for for the women audience that we have here. One line.
So, yeah, I think, I would like to quote Sadhguru. Like he says, health is not only being disease-free, health is when every cell of your body bounces with joy. So, I think that's a beautiful quote to end. And we should all, have it in our lives. So,
and the only way to do it is with yourself, by yourself. You can't get it done. It comes from inside out.
Yeah.
Okay, Soumya, what's your one line now?
Yeah, so for my one line for all the career women over there would be to say the biggest disservice you can do to your own life if you live it in guilt or based on expectations of others. And therefore free yourself of that and live a happy, stress-free, anxiety-free life.
Happiness is more important. Yes.
Absolutely.
Rajni, your one-liner.
Mine is on choice. Make your choices wisely. Make an educated choice, and then you will never have a guilt.
Wisdom and education are synonymous. Okay, great. Rajpreet.
My philosophy and motto has been to stick to your values, the core values, and they take you a long way, and never lose that essence. So that's what I would like to say.
I would say cheese. That is my motto. Say cheese. Okay, thank you, ladies, very much. Thank you so much. I can't say how much needed this conversation was for women today. It's not very often. I've never had a conversation like this with anybody before, though I know it's very much needed. I wish during my younger years I had some place to talk these things out with. I'm sure the women who are listening in, and the men too, I can see a few men, are all awakened in some way or the other. There's some shift that must have happened today for everybody who listened in. So thank you so much, and thank you, Swati. I'm handing it back to you, and all the gracefulness that you bring here. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anita. And really, I echo everything that you've said. I think it's been a very, very engaging, very insightful session all through. So we've got completely hooked on clearly. All right, let's move on.